The chamber stretched so high that Captain Jisoo Han could barely see the ceiling. Thousands of alien delegates filled the massive space, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that chimed when they moved to floating gas clouds contained in force fields. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and a few looked almost human except for their strange-colored skin or extra eyes. This was the Galactic Council, the governing body of over 300 spacefaring species. And right now they were making the biggest mistake in their history. Ambassador Taemin Park stood at the speaking platform, his elderly frame looking small and fragile against the enormous backdrop. His hair had gone completely white during his 30 years of service to Earth. Today, the lines on his face seemed deeper than ever. Jisoo watched from the diplomatic box as her boss delivered what might be his final speech to the council. Honorable delegates, I stand before you not to debate policy or trade agreements. I come with a warning that could save billions of lives. Taemin's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into 300 languages by the council's systems. Our deep space sensors have detected something approaching from dark space. Something massive. Something hungry. A ripple of dismissive sounds moved through the chamber. Some delegates made sounds like laughter. Others simply ignored the ambassador and continued their own conversations. Taemin continued, his voice growing stronger. The Krethic swarm is real. It is not a myth or a legend told to frighten children. Our sensors have tracked their approach vector. They will reach council space in 6 months. 6 months to prepare your defenses, to evacuate border colonies, to mobilize your fleets. Council Archon Velmuth rose from the central dais. The crystalline being's body reflected light in rainbow patterns, making it difficult to look at directly. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes, but the words were sharp. Ambassador Park, in your 30 years with this council, you have proven yourself prone to overreaction. Your species sees threats everywhere because you spent most of your history fighting amongst yourselves. Jisoo felt her jaw tighten. She had seen the sensor data herself. She had reviewed it with Earth's best scientists and military analysts. The swarm was real and it was coming. We have evidence, Taemin said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Detailed scans, trajectory calculations, even debris analysis from their previous feeding zones. If you would simply review the data. The council has reviewed your data, Velmuth interrupted, and we have found it inconclusive at best, fabricated at worst. The regions of space you claim show swarm activity are simply experiencing natural stellar phenomena. Dark matter fluctuations, perhaps a rogue black hole cluster. Taemin slumped slightly. Jisoo had never seen him look so defeated. Please, we are not asking you to trust us blindly. Send your own censorships. Verify our findings. But do it quickly. Time is running out. Another delegate spoke up, this one resembling a floating jellyfish with hundreds of tentacles. The real question is why Earth insists on spreading fear. What do you gain from frightening the council? Perhaps you wish to appear heroic when your predicted threat fails to materialize. Jisoo couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stood up in the diplomatic box, drawing attention from nearby delegates. We gain nothing from this warning except your mockery. Earth has no territorial ambitions in council space. We simply don't want to watch civilizations burn because pride prevented basic precautions. Velmuth's crystalline form seemed to pulse with annoyance. Captain Han, you are out of order. Military personnel do not address the council without proper authorization. Then authorize me, Jisoo shot back. I've fought in 3 colonial wars. I've seen what happens when warnings are ignored. I've pulled survivors from destroyed habitats and listened to them describe the things they saw too late to stop. If the swarm reaches your core worlds unprepared, there won't be enough survivors to say we should have listened. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates demanded Jisoo be removed. Others called for Earth's expulsion from the council entirely. A few, very few, sat in thoughtful silence. Velmuth raised a crystalline appendage and the chamber fell quiet. The council will now vote on 2 measures. First, whether to accept Earth's warning as credible and mobilize defensive preparations. Second, whether to censure Earth for persistent fear-mongering and inflammatory rhetoric. The vote took less than 10 minutes. The results were devastating. Only 12 species voted to take Earth's warning seriously. 287 voted to censure Earth. 15 abstained. Taemin gripped the edge of the speaking platform, his knuckles turning white. For a moment, Jisoo thought he might collapse. Then he straightened, gathered his dignity, and spoke one final time. When the swarm comes, and it will come, Remember this moment. Remember that we warned you. Remember that we begged you to prepare. And remember that when you finally believe us, it will be too late for many of you." He paused, looking around the chamber at faces both alien and familiar. "Earth will defend itself. We always have. But we cannot save those who refuse to acknowledge the danger." Velmuth's voice was cold. "The Council orders Earth's military vessels to return to Sol system immediately. Any Earth ship found in Council space after 48 hours will be treated as hostile." Jisoo felt her comm unit vibrate. A message from Commander Hyunwoo Choi, captain of the UES Indomitable, Earth's most advanced warship currently stationed at the edge of Council space. The message was short. "Received Council broadcast. Awaiting orders. We can be in position to monitor the swarm approach in 3 days if we ignore their command." She typed a quick response. "Stand by. We'll advise within the hour." As the Council session ended and delegates began filing out, many gave the Earth representatives looks of contempt or pity. A few, mostly representatives from younger species who had joined the Council more recently, approached Taemin with quiet words of support. But support without action was meaningless. Back in their quarters, Taemin sat heavily in a chair and closed his eyes. 30 years, Jisoo. 30 years of diplomacy, building relationships, earning trust, all gone in one vote. Jisoo poured him a drink from the bottle of Earth whiskey they kept for difficult days. "They'll learn. Unfortunately, the lesson is going to be written in blood. Millions will die because of their pride," Taemin whispered. "Maybe billions." Jisoo pulled out her secure comm unit and opened an encrypted channel to Commander Hyunwoo. "They won't listen. Prepare Protocol Horizon." Protocol Horizon was Earth's contingency plan for exactly this scenario. If the Council refused to act, Earth would act alone. The fleet wouldn't return to Sol system. Instead, it would position itself along the swarm's predicted approach vector. They would be the first line of defense, whether the Council wanted them there or not. Hyunwoo's response came back within seconds. "Understood. Indomitable and her battle group moving to forward positions. We'll be ready." Jisoo looked at Taemin, the old diplomat who had given his life to peaceful solutions. "Sir, I need to coordinate with Fleet Command. Are you going to be all right?" Taemin opened his eyes. They were tired, but there was steel in them too. "Go, do what needs to be done. Diplomacy has failed. Now it's time for warriors to speak." "And Captain?" "Make them hear us," Jisoo saluted and left. As she walked through the corridors of the Council station toward the human military offices, she thought about what was coming. The swarm wouldn't negotiate. It wouldn't respond to diplomatic pressure or economic sanctions. It would simply consume everything in its path. The Council had made their choice. Now Earth would make theirs. And when the swarm finally arrived, the galaxy would learn what humanity sounded like when they spoke through Railfire. 3 months passed. 3 months of the Council ignoring Earth's warnings while humanity quietly prepared. Then the border colonies went silent. Lieutenant Daehyun Song sat at his sensor station aboard Listening Post Theta 7, a Council facility positioned at the edge of explored space. He was one of only 30 humans assigned to Council military installations, part of an exchange program that now felt pointless. The Council military staff treated him politely, but never took his opinion seriously. He was from a young species barely worth consulting. That changed when his screen started showing readings that shouldn't be possible. "Commander Veltris, I'm detecting massive spatial distortions at grid reference 774, Daehyun called out. His supervisor, a 6-armed insectoid being, barely glanced at him. Probably another sensor ghost. "These old systems malfunction regularly." "Sir, this isn't a malfunction. I'm reading thousands of individual contacts. Tens of thousands. They're moving at sublight speeds, but their formation is coordinated." Daehyun's fingers flew across his console, trying to get a clearer picture. What he saw made his blood run cold. The space in front of the listening post was filling with objects. Ships, if you could call them that. They looked organic, like massive insects or deep-sea creatures, each one the size of a city block, and behind them came more and more. The sensor screen became so crowded with contacts that individual readings became meaningless. "Commander, we need to send an alert to Council Command." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing the command center in red light. Alarms screamed from every console. "What's happening?" Veltris moved to the main display, all 6 arms working different controls. Daehyun pulled up external cameras. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his very short life. The stars were disappearing. Not going out, but being blocked by something vast beyond comprehension. The swarm wasn't just approaching. It was already here. They're everywhere, Daehyun whispered. Billions of them. The first swarm ships reached the listening post within minutes. Through the external cameras, Daehyun watched as they attached themselves to the station's hull like parasites. The metal began to dissolve, eaten away by acid or enzymes or something worse. Beltris was screaming orders, but it was too late. The station shook as sections began to depressurize. Staff members ran for escape pods, but the pods wouldn't launch. The swarm had disabled them somehow. Daehyun grabbed the emergency communication array and broadcast on all frequencies. This is listening post Theta 7. The swarm is real. I repeat, the swarm is real. They're everywhere. Billions of them. Tell Earth they were right. The hull breached. Air rushed out. Daehyun's last act was to hit the send button on his message before the vacuum took him. On Viridian III, a council border world with a population of 4 million, Yoonji Lim was picking up her daughter from school when the emergency sirens began. At first she thought it was a drill. The council held evacuation drills twice a year. Boring affairs where everyone slowly made their way to designated shelters. This wasn't a drill. All civilians report to evacuation centers immediately. This is not a drill. The planet is under attack. Repeat, this is not a drill. Yoonji grabbed her daughter's hand and ran. The streets filled with panicking people, all heading in different directions. The council's evacuation protocols assumed orderly lines and calm cooperation. They hadn't planned for terror. The spaceport was chaos. Thousands of people pushed toward the gates trying to reach the transport ships. Council security forces tried to maintain order, but they were overwhelmed. Yoonji held her daughter tight, fighting through the crowd. Above them, the sky began to darken. Not with clouds, but with ships. Organic vessels that blotted out the sun. The swarm had arrived. The first creatures landed on the city's outskirts. They were massive things. Insectoid but wrong somehow, with too many legs and mouths that shouldn't exist. They moved through buildings like the structures weren't there, dissolving concrete and steel with ease. Yoonji made it to a transport ship with her daughter. They were among the lucky ones. The ship lifted off just as the swarm reached the spaceport. Through the window, Yoonji watched her homeworld being consumed. The creatures covered everything, transforming vibrant cities into organic mass. The planet was being eaten alive. Her transport ship made it to orbit with dozens of others, but they had nowhere to go. The swarm surrounded them, cutting off escape routes. One by one, the transport ships disappeared into the mass of organic vessels. On Earth, in the command center deep beneath Geneva, Admiral Minji Kang watched the reports come in. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and iron-gray hair, known for never wasting a single word. Right now, she didn't need to say anything. The screens told the story clearly enough. 7 council border worlds had gone dark in the past 6 hours. Listening posts reported swarm contacts across a front, spanning hundreds of light years. The projections were worse than Earth's most pessimistic estimates. The swarm wasn't just big, it was incomprehensibly vast. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Council Command, her communications officer said. They're requesting immediate military assistance. Minji raised an eyebrow. Requesting, not ordering? Yes, ma'am. The message says, and I quote, Earth Defense Forces are hereby invited to assist in repelling hostile forces at Council border regions. Any available assets would be appreciated. Appreciated. 3 months ago, the Council had ordered Earth's fleet to leave their space. They had called humanity fearmongers and warmongers. Now they were asking for help and calling it an invitation. Response, Admiral? Her officer asked. Minji let the silence stretch. Every second she delayed, more people died. She knew that. But the Council needed to understand something fundamental. They needed to learn that actions had consequences. No response, she said finally. Let them wait 48 hours. The same amount of time they gave us to leave their space. Her staff exchanged glances but said nothing. They understood. Minji turned to her tactical board. Earth's military had been preparing for this moment since the Council's dismissal. Every ship had been positioned. Every weapon system checked and double-checked. Supply lines established. Personnel briefed. The Earth Defense Forces were ready for war. How long until our fastest ships can reach the swarm front? She asked. 26 hours at maximum burn, ma'am. Good. Prepare deployment orders for the 3rd Fleet. I want them on station in 25 hours. And send a message to Captain Jisoo Han at the council station. Tell her it's time to deliver our terms. 24 hours later, another message arrived from the council. This one was different. Not a request, but a plea. Earth Defense Forces, the swarm has breached our secondary defensive lines. 17 worlds are now under attack. Estimated casualties exceed 2 billion. We require immediate assistance. Please respond. Minji picked up her communicator. Patch me through to Council Command. When the connection opened, she could see panic on the faces of the Council military staff. These were beings who had known peace for centuries. War was something they studied in history files, not something they lived through. This is Admiral Minji Kang, Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces. We have received your request for assistance. The Council Commander, a being covered in blue fur, spoke quickly. Admiral, thank you. We need your fleet to reinforce our positions at... I'm not finished, Minji interrupted. Earth will deploy our forces to combat the swarm, but there will be conditions. Conditions? Admiral, millions are dying. And millions more will die if we don't do this correctly. My terms are simple. Earth assumes operational command of all defensive operations. Your fleets will follow our tactical directives without question or delay. Any council vessel that refuses to comply with our orders will be removed from the battle theater. Do you agree? The council commander's fur bristled. You want us to hand over command of our own military? No, Minji said calmly. I'm telling you that's what will happen if you want our help. You had 6 months to prepare. You chose to ignore our warnings. Now we do this my way. Or Earth takes care of its own territory and you deal with the swarm alone. Silence on the line. Then quietly, how quickly can you deploy? Our lead elements are already in position. I need your answer now. Very well. Earth has operational command. Please, Admiral, save us. Minji allowed herself the smallest smile. Captain Han is transmitting our battle plans now. Get your ships moving. And gentlemen, stay out of our way. She cut the connection and turned to her staff. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Show them what humanity looks like when we go to war. Across human space, fleets began to move. Massive warships emerged from orbital stations. Carriers launched fighter squadrons. Troop transports filled with Marines prepared for deployment. And on every ship, weapons systems came online. Weapons the Council had never seen. Weapons designed for one purpose: to kill efficiently and in vast numbers. The swarm was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this moment for their entire existence. Every war humans had fought, every weapon they had developed, every tactical doctrine they had refined, it had all been building toward this. The galaxy was about to discover what Earth meant by the word war. The UES Indomitable cut through space at speeds that would have terrified most Council species. Commander Hyun-Woo Choi stood on the bridge, watching the tactical displays update in real time. Behind his flagship came 47 other warships, each one bristling with weapons that represented centuries of human conflict distilled into pure destructive potential. Sir, we're approaching the Viridian defense line. Swarm contacts are appearing on long-range sensors. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Soman Park, highlighted the enemy positions on the main screen. Hyun-Woo studied the display. The swarm had arranged itself in a massive organic wall, millions of bioships forming a barrier that stretched across the entire sector. Council forces were scattered behind the line, their formations broken and disorganized. They had tried to fight the swarm using traditional tactics, engaging at close range with energy weapons. It hadn't worked. The swarm simply absorbed the damage and kept coming. All ships, battle formation Delta, weapons free on my mark. Hyun-Woo's voice was calm, almost casual. He'd fought in 3 colonial wars and dozens of smaller engagements. This was just another battle, albeit on a scale he'd never seen before. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Council Fleet Commander Thrace. He wants to coordinate our attack with his forces. Tell him to stay behind our formation and observe. If he wants to help, he can rescue survivors after we clear a path. The Indomitable reached optimal firing range. Hyun-Woo looked at his weapons officer. Target the center of their formation. All railguns, maximum penetration loads. Fire. The ship shuddered as its main railgun unleashed hell. The weapon used electromagnetic acceleration to fire a solid projectile at 3% of light speed. No fancy energy beams, no exotic particles, just a chunk of tungsten alloy moving fast enough to punch through anything. The round crossed the distance to the swarm in seconds. When it hit, the result was spectacular. The kinetic energy vaporized the first bioship instantly. The projectile kept going, tearing through 5 more vessels before its momentum was finally exhausted. Each impact released energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. All ships firing, So-Min reported. The fleet opened up as one. Dozens of railgun rounds streaked across space, each one carving a path of destruction through the swarm formation. On a council observation ship, Fleet Commander Thrace watched in horror and awe. What kind of weapons are those? His science officer checked his instruments. They're firing solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. The kinetic impact is, Commander, a single one of those rounds has more destructive power than our entire fleet's energy weapons combined. They're not weapons of defense, Thrace whispered. They're extinction tools. The swarm tried to respond, sending a wave of bioships forward to engage the human fleet. They moved fast, propelled by biological jets that spewed organic matter into space, but they were too slow. The railguns fired again and again, tearing through the approaching vessels before they could close the distance. Adjust targeting, spread pattern. Let's clear this sector, Hyunwoo ordered. The fleet shifted formation, their guns creating overlapping fields of fire. Nothing that entered that zone survived. But the swarm was learning. The bioships began moving erratically, making themselves harder to target. They released clouds of organic chaff that confused sensors, and they kept coming wave after wave, testing the human defenses. Sir, they're adapting to our attack pattern, So-Min said. Hit rates are down 20%. Then we adapt faster. Switch to cluster munitions. Show them what happens when we get creative. The railguns fired again, but this time the projectiles were different. At a predetermined distance, each round split into hundreds of smaller projectiles, creating a shotgun effect that shredded multiple targets. The swarm's evasive maneuvers became useless against the spread. Aboard the troop transport Valkyrie, Colonel Seokjin Ryu briefed his Marines. They were the 3rd Orbital Drop Division, the best of humanity's ground forces. Their mission was insane even by Marine standards. Board crippled swarm vessels and gather intelligence. Listen up, Seokjin barked. The Navy is punching holes in their formation. Our job is to get inside those holes, plant our feet on those bioships, and find out what makes them tick. We need samples, data cores if they have them, and any information about their command structure. A young Marine raised his hand. Sir, what if the ships are still alive when we board them? Seokjin grinned. It wasn't a nice grin. Then you shoot them until they're dead. Remember your training. These things are organic, which means they can be killed. Aim for what looks like vital organs and don't stop shooting until it stops moving. The drop pods launched an hour later. They were small, heavily armored capsules that could survive almost anything. The pods punched through the vacuum, targeting bioships that had been disabled by railgun fire. The swarm tried to intercept them, but the pods were too small and too fast. Seokjin's pod hit its target with enough force to embed itself deep in the organic hull. The front hatch blew open, and he rolled out with his rifle ready. The interior of the bioship was like being inside a living creature. The walls pulsed with movement. Strange fluids dripped from organic tubes overhead, and it smelled like death. His team fanned out, weapons sweeping for threats. They found them quickly. Smaller creatures, like worker drones, scuttled through the passages. They had too many legs and eyes that glowed with bioluminescence. The Marines opened fire and the creatures died, their bodies dissolving into organic sludge. Keep moving. Command wants us deep in this thing's systems. Seokjin led the way, following conduits that seemed important. They passed chambers filled with strange cocoons. Inside each one was something that might have been a council species once. The Marines recorded everything but didn't stop to investigate. Time was limited. They found what they were looking for in the central chamber, a massive pulsing organ that looked like a brain. Around it were organic terminals, and in those terminals were records. The swarm kept data stored in biological memory, and that memory told a terrible story. Colonel, you need to see this, his tech specialist said, interfacing with the organic system. These things have been feeding for thousands of years. The records show 17 council species that went extinct. Species the council thought just disappeared or evolved beyond physical form. The swarm ate them, Seokjin said quietly. Yes, sir. And there's more. These ships are just the forward scouts. The main swarm mass is still in dark space, weeks behind this advance force. What we're fighting now is less than 1% of their total numbers. Seokjin felt his stomach drop. They were barely holding the line against this advance force. If the main swarm arrived, get that data downloaded. We need to get this to Admiral Kang immediately. The extraction was harder than the insertion. The bioship had started healing itself, sealing the passages with new growth. The Marines fought their way back to the drop pods, burning through ammunition and explosives. 2 Marines didn't make it. Their pods launched anyway. Their bodies recovered by the fleet later. Back on the Indomitable, Hyunwoo reviewed the data from the Marine raids. 17 extinct species, and the main swarm is still coming. Sir, Dr. Yuna Bay is requesting an emergency channel. She says it's about the new weapon system. Hyunwoo pulled up the communication. Dr. Yuna was Earth's chief weapons engineer, a genius who had designed most of their current arsenal. Doctor, I hope you have good news. I have effective news, Commander. The swarm operates through a bioelectric neural network. Every ship is connected, sharing information and adapting together. It's what makes them so hard to fight. And you've found a way to disrupt it? Yuna smiled. Better. I've found a way to fry it. EMP warheads modified to target organic neural tissue. One detonation should cripple everything in a 10,000-kilometer radius. How long until we can deploy them? They're already loaded on your ships. I wanted to surprise you, Hyunwoo laughed. Doctor, you're a dangerous woman. Prepare for combat deployment. The next engagement with the swarm was different. The human fleet advanced as before, railguns tearing through bioships. But when the swarm concentrated its forces for a counterattack, Hyunwoo gave the order. Deploy EMP warheads. Full spread. Special missiles launched from multiple ships driving deep into the swarm formation before detonating. The electromagnetic pulses weren't visible, but their effects were immediate and devastating. Entire sections of the swarm went dark as the neural connections fried. Billions of organisms suddenly cut off from the collective went dormant or died. Target the disabled sections. Don't let them recover. The railguns fired again, this time meeting no resistance. The crippled bioships were torn apart. On his observation ship, Thrace watched the human fleet operate with precision that seemed impossible. They moved like a single organism themselves, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, and most terrifying of all, they showed no hesitation, no mercy. How do they fight like this? He asked his tactical officer. They've been at war with themselves for most of their history, Commander. This is what they're good at. Thrace thought about his own species' history. Thousands of years of peace and prosperity, building art and culture. Humanity had spent those same years perfecting the art of killing. The medical bay of the UES Mercy was a vision of controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses moved between beds where wounded Marines lay recovering from injuries that would have killed them without immediate treatment. Some were missing limbs waiting for prosthetic attachments. Others had suffered exposure to the swarm's toxic biochemistry and needed constant monitoring. All of them had survived boarding actions that seemed designed to break both body and spirit. Counselor Thrace walked slowly through the bay, his 4 eyes taking in details that his reports had failed to convey. These humans had fought for council worlds, bled for civilizations that had dismissed them as primitive warmongers, and they hadn't asked for anything in return except the authority to do what needed to be done. A young Marine, her arm in a regeneration sleeve, noticed him staring. "Can I help you, sir?" "I wanted to see for myself," Thrace said quietly. The reports mentioned casualties, but numbers don't tell the story. 40% of the fleet damaged or destroyed. 60,000 dead, another 30,000 wounded. The Marine's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held something deeper. "We knew the cost going in. Didn't change what needed to be done." "Why?" Thrace asked. "Why sacrifice so much for worlds that aren't your own?" The Marine looked at him like he'd asked why water was wet. "Because someone had to, and we were the only ones who could." Thrace left the medical bay with that answer echoing in his mind. It was so simple, so human. They fought because they could, because they had the weapons and the will to use them, not for glory or territory, but because the alternative was watching civilizations die. On the bridge of the Indomitable, now serving as the fleet command ship, Hyunwoo studied tactical projections that grew worse by the hour. The swarm's advance force had been stopped, but at terrible cost, and the intelligence from the Marine raids painted an even darker picture. "The main swarm mass will reach our position in 14 days, his tactical officer reported. "Estimates put their numbers at 200 times what we've already faced." Fleet status? 22 capital ships operational, 41 destroyers and frigates. Marine strength is down to 60%. Ammunition stocks are at 35% of combat load. Hyunwoo did the math quickly. They couldn't win, not in a sustained engagement against numbers that large. The swarm would simply overwhelm them through sheer mass, adapting to human tactics faster than Earth could respond. "Sir, Admiral Kang is requesting a secure channel." The Admiral's face appeared on screen. She looked tired, the weight of command showing in lines around her eyes. "Commander, I've reviewed your report. Your recommendations? We establish a secondary defensive line and conduct a fighting retreat. We can't hold this position against the main swarm mass. Council Command wants us to stand and defend. They've offered reinforcements. With respect, ma'am, Council reinforcements won't change the tactical picture. Their ships can't operate in our battle formations, and their weapons are ineffective against swarm vessels. They'll just give the enemy more targets." Minji nodded slowly. "I agree, but there's a political dimension you need to understand. If we retreat now, the Council will see it as abandonment. They're terrified, Hyunwoo. They need to see us standing firm. They'll see us get destroyed instead. Perhaps. Or perhaps we buy enough time for Plan B to work." "What's Plan B?" "A direct strike on the swarm's central nexus. Dr. Yuna believes she can develop a weapon that will cascade through their neural network, killing the entire organism at once. But she needs time to build it, and we need to locate the nexus." Hyunwoo felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. "You're talking about a suicide mission. I'm talking about a mission with low survival probability but high strategic value. If we can kill the swarm's brain, the body dies with it. Every bioship, every organism, all of it stops functioning. How long does Dr. Yuna need? 2 weeks minimum. Which means you need to hold the line for 2 weeks against an enemy force 200 times larger than what you just fought." Hyunwoo looked at his tactical display, at the ships represented by small icons. Each one carried hundreds or thousands of crew members, people who trusted him to lead them well, people who would die if he made mistakes. "I'll need authorization to implement extreme tactical measures." "You have it. Do whatever is necessary. Earth is counting on you, Commander. The galaxy is counting on you." The channel closed. Hyunwoo stood silently for a moment, then turned to his bridge crew. "Senior staff meeting in 1 hour. We're going to plan how to fight an unwinnable battle and survive." The meeting was brutal in its honesty. They went through every option, every tactical innovation, every desperate measure. The conclusion was unavoidable. They couldn't win, but they might be able to survive long enough. "We use the asteroid belt," Hyunwoo said, highlighting a region on the tactical map. "The swarm moves in predictable patterns. We seed the belt with mines and automated weapons platforms. When they enter, we trigger a collapse. That will only slow them down." His weapons officer objected. "That's all we need. Slow them down, force them to adapt, waste their time. Every hour we buy is an hour closer to Dr. Yuna completing her weapon. And when they get past the belt, we fight them ship to ship. Hit-and-run tactics. Never stay engaged long enough for them to concentrate forces. We make them chase us through every debris field and gas cloud in the sector. Over the next week, the human fleet transformed the region into a death trap. They planted nuclear mines and asteroids. They positioned railgun platforms with targeting AI that could operate independently. They created false sensor signatures to confuse swarm scouts. Every dirty trick humanity had learned in centuries of war they employed. The Council fleet tried to help, but their attempts were more hindrance than assistance. Their ships were too large, too slow, designed for showing presence rather than fighting wars. After a Council dreadnought accidentally disabled one of the minefields, Hyunwoo politely ordered them to the rear. Captain Jisoo Han, now serving as liaison between human and Council forces, delivered the message personally. "Commander Choi's orders are clear. Council vessels are to remain in defensive positions around evacuation zones." The Council fleet commander bristled. "We're not cowards. We want to fight. Then fight by doing what you do well. Evacuate civilians, rescue survivors, maintain supply lines. Let us do what we do well. Which is? Kill things efficiently." Jisoo's bluntness shocked the Council commander, but he couldn't argue with results. Human forces were accomplishing what entire Council fleets had failed to do, stopping the swarm's advance, but the cost was mounting. Each day brought new casualty reports. The UES Defiant was lost with all hands when it was swarmed by bioships that adapted to its defensive patterns. The destroyer Bold made a final stand covering a civilian evacuation, firing until its ammunition was exhausted and then ramming a swarm capital ship. taking both vessels out of the fight permanently. In medical facilities across the fleet, doctors worked around the clock. The wounded came in waves faster than they could be treated. Some injuries were beyond current medical technology to repair. Those Marines and sailors faced futures as civilians. Their combat careers ended by swarm weapons. Colonel Seokjin Ryu visited as many of the wounded as time allowed. He owed them that much. These were his people, his responsibility. He found a young Marine named Jinho who had lost both legs in a boarding action. "Sir?" Jinho tried to sit up straighter in his bed. "At ease, Marine. How are you feeling?" "Like I got stepped on by a swarm bioship, which is basically what happened." Jinho's attempt at humor didn't reach his eyes. "They're sending me home. Medical discharge. You did your duty. No one can ask more than that. But the fight isn't over. My team is still out there and I'm stuck in a hospital bed." Seokjin sat down beside the bed. "Let me tell you something. Every person in this fleet has a job. Some jobs involve shooting things. Other jobs involve surviving, recovering, and telling people back home what we did here. Your job now is that second thing. Make sure Earth knows what happened. Make sure they remember." "Remember what, sir?" "That when the galaxy needed defenders, humans answered. And we paid in blood." The main swarm mass arrived on schedule, and it was worse than projections. The sensor screens filled with contacts until individual tracking became impossible. The swarm didn't approach in waves or formations. It came as a tide, an ocean of organic vessels that filled space from horizon to horizon. "All ships, this is Commander Choi. Execute planned desperate measures. Good hunting." The fleet scattered, each ship group implementing hit-and-run tactics. They would strike at the swarm's edges, inflict maximum damage, then retreat before the enemy could concentrate forces. It was exhausting, dangerous, and the only way to survive. The asteroid belt traps worked better than expected. Thousands of swarm vessels were destroyed in the initial ambush, but thousands more kept coming, learning with each loss. The automated weapons platforms fired until their ammunition was exhausted, then self-destructed to deny the swarm intelligence data. Days blurred together. Sleep became a luxury. Crews pushed themselves beyond normal limits, surviving on stimulants and sheer determination. The Indomitable took damage from a dozen engagements, its hull scarred and blackened, but it kept fighting. The swarm's nexus was a moon-sized organism that pulsed with bioluminescent light patterns that hurt to look at. It floated in deep space, surrounded by billions of smaller bioships that orbited it like a protective shell. This was the brain of the swarm, the central intelligence that coordinated every organism across light years of space. And it was exactly where humanity needed to strike. Admiral Minji Kang stood in Earth Fleet Command, watching the battle unfold through real-time feeds. Around her, tactical officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Every available ship, every weapon, every Marine had been committed to this single assault. There would be no second chances. "Admiral, the fleet reports ready for Operation Final Dawn," her chief of staff said. "Execute the operation. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us." At the front of the strike force, the UES Indomitable led a wedge formation of humanity's remaining capital ships. Behind them came the smaller vessels, destroyers and frigates that would screen the approach. And in the center, protected by every gun the fleet could muster, was the transport ship Prometheus. Inside its cargo bay was Dr. Yuna's cascade device and a team of Marines led by Colonel Seokjin Ryu. "All ships, this is Commander Choi. We've trained for this. We've bled for this. Now we finish it. Target the Nexus defense perimeter and clear us a path." The fleet opened fire. Railguns unleashed streams of projectiles at relativistic speeds. The kinetic rounds tore through the outer shell of bioships, creating holes in the defensive formation. But the swarm adapted quickly, redirecting forces to plug the gaps. "They're learning our firing patterns faster than expected," the tactical officer reported. "Then we stop using patterns. All ships weapons free. Fire at will." The battle became chaos. Human ships darted through the swarm formation, firing from unpredictable angles. The bioships tried to coordinate a response, but humanity's tactical doctrine was built on controlled chaos. No two ships followed the same attack pattern. No formation stayed static long enough to be effectively targeted. Captain Jisoo Han coordinated the operation from a command ship, directing council forces to support positions. She had convinced several council fleets to join the assault, though their role was limited. They created diversionary attacks on the Nexus's flanks. Drawing swarm attention away from the main thrust, Captain. Counselor Thrace is requesting permission to lead his fleet on a direct assault, her communications officer said. Negative. He'll be torn apart before getting close. He says his people need to contribute. They need to prove they're not cowards. Jisoo understood. The Council species had spent months watching humanity fight their war. They needed to do something, anything, to feel like they mattered. Tell him he can support the Marine insertion. We need someone to keep the approach vector clear. He's accepting the assignment. The Indomitable took a direct hit that breached 2 decks and killed 18 crew members. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge as systems failed. Hyunwoo grabbed a support rail as the ship shuddered. Hull integrity at 60%. Main railgun offline. Portside weapons showing green. Starboard weapons destroyed. Redirect power from life support and damaged sections. I want that main gun back online in 5 minutes. Sir, the Prometheus is approaching insertion range, but the swarm is concentrating forces on their vector. Hyunwoo made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. All ships ramming protocols. Create a corridor for the Prometheus, whatever it takes. Across the fleet, captains received the order and understood what it meant. Ships with critical damage or depleted ammunition turned toward the densest concentrations of swarm vessels. They burned their engines at maximum output, accelerating to speeds that would make retreat impossible. The UES Defiant was first. Its captain, a woman named Hana Kim, aimed her crippled destroyer at a cluster of bioships blocking the Prometheus's path. This is Defiant, Actual. We're making our final run. Tell our families we did our duty. The ship struck at terminal velocity. The kinetic impact vaporized the Defiant and carved a hole through the swarm formation. 3 more human ships followed, each one trading their lives for precious seconds. Prometheus is through. They're approaching the Nexus surface. Inside the transport ship, Colonel Shokjin Ryu and his Marines prepared for the hardest mission of their lives. They would land on the Nexus itself, fight their way to its core, and plant the Cascade device. Simple in concept, nearly impossible in execution. Listen up, Seokjin shouted over the noise of descent thrusters. We plant this device, we activate it, and then we run like hell. The extraction window is 3 minutes. Anyone not back at the ship in 3 minutes gets left behind. Understood? Sir, yes, sir. The Prometheus shook as it landed on the Nexus's organic surface. The ramp dropped, and the Marines rushed out into an environment that belonged in nightmares. The surface was covered in organic growths that moved and pulsed. Smaller swarm creatures scurried everywhere, worker organisms maintaining the vast biostructure. Weapons free. Cut us a path. The Marines advanced, firing plasma cutters and rifles. The small creatures died easily, but more kept coming. The team fought their way through layers of organic material, following Dr. Yuna's directions transmitted from the fleet. Target is 200 meters down, bearing 090. You'll know it when you see it. They knew it. The Nexus's core was a massive chamber filled with neural tissue that crackled with bioelectric energy. Streams of data flowed through organic conduits, managing the swarm's vast collective intelligence. It was beautiful in its alien complexity, and it needed to die. Plant the device. Activation sequence on my mark. The Cascade device was surprisingly small, no larger than a backpack. Dr. Yuna had explained that it didn't need to be big. It just needed to introduce one specific frequency into the Nexus's neural network, and the organism would tear itself apart, trying to process the impossible signal. Device planted. Beginning activation sequence. Alarms erupted throughout the chamber. The Nexus had finally understood what was happening. The organic walls began to close, trying to crush the intruders. Larger swarm creatures, warrior organisms with armored carapaces and bladed limbs, emerged from side passages. Fall back. Fighting retreat! The Marines ran while firing behind them. 2 went down, overwhelmed by warrior organisms. Seokjin grabbed one Marine who stumbled, practically carrying him toward the exit. Behind them, the Cascade device's timer counted down. They made it to the surface with 30 seconds to spare. The Prometheus was already lifting off, its ramp still down. Marines dove through the opening, landing in heaps inside the cargo bay. Seokjin was last aboard, and he watched through the closing ramp as the Nexus's surface began to convulse. Device activation in 3, 2, 1. Nothing visible happened. No explosion, no flash of light. But through every ship's sensors, the effect was clear. The swarm's neural network lit up with impossible signals, cascading through every connection, every organism, spreading faster than the swarm could adapt. Bioships simply stopped functioning. Their organic systems shut down as the neural override destroyed their ability to coordinate. Some exploded as biological processes went haywire. Others just drifted, dead organisms floating in space. On the Indomitable's bridge, Hyunwoo watched the swarm die. It took less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes for trillions of organisms to cease functioning, their collective consciousness shattered beyond repair. Swarm contacts going dark across all sectors. His tactical officer reported, "It's working. It's actually working." But the cost was visible on every screen. The human fleet was devastated. 70% of ships damaged or destroyed. The casualty count exceeded 89,000. Ships drifted with dead engines and breached hulls, their crews working desperately to effect repairs. Jisoo opened a channel to every ship in the engagement zone, human and council alike. Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. "This is Captain Han to all forces. The swarm is dead. The threat is over. But we must never forget what it cost to reach this moment. 89,000 humans gave their lives defending a galaxy that didn't believe we knew what we were doing. Remember them, honor them, and make damn sure this never happens again." In the council chambers weeks later, the mood was subdued. The representatives who had voted to censure Earth now sat in silence as Admiral Minji Kang addressed them. "The swarm is destroyed. Your worlds are safe. But the galaxy learned several hard lessons, and I'm here to ensure you don't forget them." Archon Velmuth, who had dismissed Earth's warnings, spoke quietly. "Admiral, the Council is prepared to offer Earth significant concessions. Territory, technology, resources. Name your price." "I don't want your territory or your technology," Minji said flatly. "I want one thing, a seat on this council with full voting authority. And I want the authority to reform your military doctrine from the ground up. You want to change how we defend ourselves? I want to make sure you actually can defend yourselves. Because next time, humanity might not be here to save you." The vote was unanimous. Earth received its council seat, and with it came the responsibility of reshaping the galaxy's military capabilities. Human tactical instructors were assigned to every major council fleet.